You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Adler and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 393, listener Q&A for, I would call this November 2021, although we're like a day away from December. But this will be the last Q&A show that we have for the year. And thanks to you, we have a ton of questions that we're going to get through. So we solicit your questions through Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Discord, however you want to send them to us. And we give the Patreon members first priority to get their questions answered in the amount of time that we've got. And then we'll hit all the other ones as time permits. And we've got quite a bit of questions that kind of run the gambit of all kinds of stuff. Everything from the Book of Boba Fett, as you would probably expect people to be talking about, since we're on the cusp of that airing here in just a few weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever that may be at this point, to the High Republic. We've got some Legends stuff in there. There's some video game references. It's just kind of all over the place. And speaking of all over the place, Jonesy, welcome to the show. Jonesy, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, man. I don't even know what that means, like all over the place.
I have no idea.
So it's funny, though. Every time we go live, like every device around me and my watch and everything just blows up because it's all the notifications saying that we've gone live. So it's a surreal experience when everything's just buzzing and feels like your whole body's just vibrating.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so scrambling to get everything turned off. But yeah, it's good to be back. I know we had the holidays come up, and we took some time off for there. Then, I guess, during that time. But we've got quite a bit. I feel really good about the shows coming up. We've got everything laid out. Got some pretty interesting topics. Maybe we can talk about that later on. I think we shared those with the Patreon members. So if you're a Patreon member, you know pretty much the schedule for the rest of the year in terms of what we're going to be doing. So wide variety of topics, and super excited about that. But let's get into today's main show. Well, we'll get into the news. We've got some news. Some stuff has happened over the last week and a half.
Relevant and exciting news, actually.
Yeah. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about your hair. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It's getting long, though.
It's getting there.
You know, we're going to be talking about Sabayoth tonight. So I don't know, if you let it grow just a little bit longer, you could go for that, cosplay or even Halloween next year.
Yeah.
There you go.
Got my lightning fingers going.
Yeah, lightning fingers. It's kind of like jazz hands, just a little bit more threatening.
Yeah.
All right. So, no, seriously, let's talk about your hair. No, seriously, let's talk about Natasha. I'm going to screw her name up. Natasha Liu Bordizzo. Did I say that
I believe. That's how I would have pronounced it.
Okay, so she's unofficially been cast as Sabine Wren at this point. Right. Every major news outlet has pretty much picked this story up and covered it, although it really kind of stemmed from only one or two outlets, and everybody else just said, oh, yeah, we have it on good word. This is going to happen. So not official. However, all signs point that she has indeed been cast. We're just waiting for them to kind of make that announcement officially. I want to get your thoughts on, her likeness and what you expect and, all that. But this was one of the things, and I kind of, sarcastically pointed out, this is a incredible news coming out of Disney Day or Disney Plus Day, although it was a week after Disney Plus Day. So maybe, in all fairness, maybe things really aren't finalized 100%. And so they truly can't say anything. Maybe it's just everything, but the writing is not, dry on the paper, so to speak. But it feels like this is something they could have, frontlined, right? To kind of get, we talked about anything, right? Should they have given us something more than we got? But this would have been something that I think people would have at least grabbed onto and really enjoyed talking about, because when you look at her likeness, I think it's pretty spot on. I posted a little thing on Twitter, and I know a lot of people, I've seen somebody already change the color of her hair and put her in the outfit, photoshopped and everything, and it looks pretty darn cool. But what do you think of this casting? Are you familiar with her at all? And just kind of just general thoughts there.
Yeah, I've seen her in a couple of things, and I don't have any complaints about it. As far as likeness goes, yeah, she's seemingly more on point than Rosario Dawson. Wow, I sounded like Mike for a minute. So more likeness than she was. And so I think from a visual standpoint, that'll be good. We'll have to see what the voice and mannerisms, those are the things that make the characters right. So that'll be, and Sabine has that kind of edge to her, which would be really exciting to see on screen, and about where she is this far down the road. As far as Disney Plus Day, though, this is something where alone, this wouldn't have really done a whole lot for the fan base.
Right.
I don't think anything would have really changed about the, I'm just going to go and call it disappointment of the lack of really big news, right? I don't think this would have done anything. If anything, I think it may have made it worse, and I would have felt bad for her that people would have dumped on that was the only news worthy of giving us. And it's a person that's really not totally well known yet. I don't believe so. Right. At least I've only, like I said, I've only seen a couple of small works of hers, and that's been about it. But yeah, the likeness, you and I talked about this, though, is pretty good. I think this is going to look pretty good. And yeah, I've seen some of the images, people cropping her hair and give her a little bit of color, and yeah, I think it could work.
There's some video out there too where she was, I forget what movie it was or TV show, or she was in something where she was a sword wielding character of some sort.
Yeah, she was in Crouching Tiger. Yeah.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah, that's kind of her big claim to fame. But she was a teenager when she did that.
Oh, okay. I gotta say, wow, that was a long time ago. If that was,
it was, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, she's probably about 50. No, I'm kidding.
No.
No. So all good things, all positive. I'm looking forward to that, and I would agree. I think the likeness here is more than Rosario Dawson. We'll see how they. What's going to be important is that chemistry, right? Yeah. You got to, for me at least personally, you don't have to, but I want to feel like those are the characters straight out of, Rebels, and a continuation of some sort from that last scene where they both know they've got a mission that's, bigger than them. It's Ezra, and there's more to that whole storyline. And that's kind of where we'll get to that in here a little bit, because one of the questions I had for you was, now that, we have a Sabine character unofficially announced, but potentially going to be in the show. Does that change the direction of the show more than we had originally thought? And so I'll elaborate on that as we get closer to that question. So
sure.
All right. Book of Boba Fett. We got I don't know, what are we calling this? Like a teaser trailer or a mini trailer?
Yeah, it's just another teaser. Yeah, it was the thing. Like, this teaser only had one line of dialogue in it. Mm-hmm. It was, "I am Boba Fett." So yeah, this is just one of those kind of sizzled teaser things where they want to throw some. But what's cool about these, you do get a few new images as they do more of these, and that's what made this one exciting, because we do have an image of Boba Fett laying in some liquid with a mouthpiece on, presumably for air. That certainly suggests that maybe the capsule that we saw in the background truly is a bacta tank, and that's how he's been changing his appearance and healing up.
Yeah. Yeah, when I first saw this, I immediately went to Twitter and I thought, oh, well, this jacks with my theory that, he wasn't rescued by the Sand People. And, after I thought about it more, like 2 minutes later, I thought, well, it's probably, him. It's probably a modern day shot, given how, how he looked. He looked older. He was more full, I guess. All right. So this is probably him recovering fully, like that. That's the word I use. I'm not chubby. I'm just full.
Right. You're prosperous.
Prosperous. Yes. Healthy. But no, seriously, the way he looked, though, gave the appearance that this is a modern like a present day shot, if you will. And this is likely in either in Slave One or, wherever he's at. Maybe it could be on Jabba's palace. We don't know. But it wasn't a flashback of any sort. That's not my theory at this point, but
I kind of want to know where all the money is coming from to be able to afford this type of things, because you couldn't imagine that Jabba's palace would have a lot of this stuff laying around, especially that modern, because the place probably has been a dustbin. It didn't look like it was in great state of repair under Bib Fortuna.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we know where Jabba's wealth is a good question. I don't know if they'll address that. We probably need to assume that Boba Fett, even though, he wasn't planning on retiring. So either his dad invested in a 529 college fund, right, a long time ago, back on, whatever. But bad joke. Or he just had all his wealth, right? He had a ton of money somewhere. So it was just a matter of him getting back on his feet, literally, and then getting out there and getting his wealth back and, doing all that. But
all right, we're going to nerd out then. But the thing is, though, is that, well, I guess there is a delay, because Empire Strikes Back. So we know with the comics that he's not flush with cash still. So even though he does well, it seems like I'm assuming he's probably investing in the ship and keeping up his armory and things like that. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't seem like he's always got a ton of money, even though he's very successful and very widely known. But anyway, that's just kind of things to think about and see if they explain any of that of where this is coming from as we get into the show. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm excited. Hopefully we'll get one more substantial trailer. Something that shows us a little bit more than what we've seen so far. I think that's still on the table, given that we're still today's the 30th. We're like exactly 29 days away.
Yeah, less than 30 days.
I would imagine that week before we're going to get something more.
I don't have a Christmas countdown calendar. I've got a Boba Fett countdown calendar.
Yeah. It's an advent calendar that I've just rigged for Boba Fett.
The advent of Boba.
The advent of Boba. I guess nobody made that yet. Okay, so all right. Well, more to come on that for sure as we get closer to the 29th. We've got a couple of shows between now and then, so we'll talk about that more. Okay, the next thing is we were talking about before we went on our little vacation here about we got wind that IDW was kind of on the way out, and we weren't exactly sure what that meant. What hole was going to be.
Was that R2D2 in the background?
That was my phone. Yes, and that's my message alert. So that was RTD2. Yeah, not to be
just hey, if you ever questioned if we lived the lifestyle, we do.
I mean, I've got the hat, the shirt,
that's bracelet. All you've got. A wardrobe, man. People could have thought it was just a wardrobe
too.
Whoa, and I know you got socks.
Yeah, I do have socks.
Okay, I derailed us there. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that was my bad. I should have turned that off, and I didn't. Okay, let's just take it from the top. Okay, hey everybody, welcome to the. So seriously, we were talking about IDW was on the way out, and we were kind of speculating about who was going to fill that hole and what was going to, what publisher could be out there. And I think between us, I mean, the one that really just kind of came to mind was Dark Horse, because if you think about it, it's got to be a big enough company that can do the publications, get them distributed, right? And at the same time, it has to be somebody they're going to trust. I don't think they're going to take, a chance on somebody by moving over some of their big titles like this, especially in the hands of like the High Republic Adventures. And so really, it only left Dark Horse, and we were right. It wasn't that big of a secret, I guess.
Well, you called it, not me. Yeah,
well,
it was all you, man.
I was saying we as a team, man, we called it.
I'll give credit where it's due.
All right, well, I called
it. You were on this one.
Yeah. Well, it's just there again. There's not. I mean, there are a lot of comic book publishers, but to fit the needs, it's kind of a small list in my opinion. But nonetheless, it's Dark Horse. The band's getting back together. Yeah. What do you think about this? Because we were kind of joking about, wouldn't that be funny? Because that's all I ever knew for comics outside of the Marvel line back in the 70s and 80s or late 70s, all through the 80s. That was the only other comic book company that I was even aware of. I mean, they did all of this stuff, right? They were the first ones to pick up the Dark Force Rising, and of course all of the. I'm trying to think of the other one they did.
They had Legacy. They had Knights of the Old Republic. They had
it was Star Wars Classic is the one I was trying to remember. You remember that where they took the Archie Goodwin's comic book Saturday morning or Sunday morning comic strips, and they kind of put them into a comic book form. Right. I believe that was Dark Horse as well. So I don't know that any other company has really done. It's not outside of more recent companies.
Yeah, and there's no one that they could really trust. I guess there's more today. I mean, when the 90s kind of resurged with comics, others emerged from that, like Todd McFarlane, whenever he ended the Marvel run with Spider-Man, all of that, and went to Image, and so a couple of companies spawned from there. But I think when you look at the landscape of who does it make sense, if it wasn't like an Image, Dark Horse is always kind of present, and they still produce really good material, and they've got some really, really fantastic artists and writers on staff. And I'm hoping that we don't lose people like DJO and some of the others that have been writing some of the comic content, but some of the artists that they've got in that camp really are top notch.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is a win-win in my opinion. I hate that, it sounds cliche, but it really is. I mean, there's just some good stuff there. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. One drawback though, man, it's setting the prices of Dark Horse original comics through the roof, man.
Oh, have they?
Yeah. I've been trying to fill in some gaps on things, and man, that got expensive. I had to back off on that one. I had to get the alligator arms there and not commit to that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some I'd really like to get. I'm trying to find, Mike a Christmas present. I keep wanting to give him the marriage of Luke and Mara Jade, but
oh yeah, that's a classic.
Yeah, but the Star Wars Union
and his
the Star Wars Union comic is not cheap though.
Yeah, that's a good comic. Okay, last thing before we get into our questions. I mentioned this to you. It happened
Right.
probably about 2 weeks ago, and I don't think we covered it because it really wasn't a big deal. But there
I
was a
think this
lot
is a
of,
huge deal, man.
well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I mean, if you weren't going to go, then probably not a big deal, right? But what I'm talking about here is Galactic Star Cruiser, right? That we've got news now when they showed like a trailer or a preview or some kind of footage of somebody training with that lightsaber that we saw, right?
This is the Disney Hotel at Walt Disney World.
Yes,
by
the
way.
Walt Disney
Or the
Hotel,
Star Wars Hotel. Yeah.
yeah. And we were in that picture, everybody, when they showed that lightsaber, everybody got really excited, right? Because this looks like
Right.
a real life lightsaber that is turning on and off. It goes up, it goes down, it lights up. It's beautiful. And then there was news about 2 weeks ago that was not going to be something that visitors, paying customers, would be able to get their hands on. That was exclusively for the cast and crew or whatever. I know there were a lot of people that were upset about this because I think as much as it may be hard to think that a lightsaber would be a draw like that,
Right.
given how amazing this lightsaber was, and it's
Yeah.
the coveted holy grail of, apart from the plasma one that the guy's doing out on YouTube, that's literally,
That
could
one's
cut
cool.
your hand off, right? Which is
Yep.
really cool. This is what everybody's been waiting for. Everybody that's been a child that's ever thought of wielding a lightsaber has wanted a toy like this. And I think it was like $6,000, $10,000, or there was some price tag they had thrown around about it. But the takeaway here is you're not going to get to touch this lightsaber. What does that mean for you? Like, is that like a
No double meaning intended.
yeah, no, there's no innuendo there.
Right.
But yeah, that's kind of a big deal. Like I know that there are a lot of people that are disappointed by that. I wasn't planning on going, so it's like I literally, I think I told Ash, it's no skin off my back. I wasn't going to go anyways. I think at some point, once like everything, once production gets up and they figure out new ways and new innovations and technology, maybe they will be able to sell this. Is it going to be anything available in the next 2 to 5 years? Probably not. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think the part that's probably rubbing people the wrong way is it's just the sheer cost. There are kind of three things, right? The cost of it, you would expect to get a costume out of it, and I think people were really expecting to get that lightsaber out of it. And when you're talking about thousands of dollars, and we're not talking just 1,000 or two, usually for most families, this is going to be in that $6,000 to $10,000 range. So it is a huge chunk of change to be able to go on this voyage and this experience, right? And for them to not get a piece of it that was really probably the pinnacle of what that would be and just how cool that would be, I think is going to rub people the wrong way. Now, should there have been an expectation they would get that in the first place? I don't know. They probably not. And I'm with you, especially with all of the other supply chain issues and everything else we've seen, that this is a casualty of that. There won't be other casualties, even maybe clothes and things like that of the costumes, although that would be a severe hit given the experience side of it. I could see where maybe this would come later, or like you said, as things get less expensive to manufacture, this would then be one of those premium markup type of options where you can go and get this for a few extra $100 or something like that. It's not going to be cheap when it does, and maybe it's one of those add-on packages.
Right. You pay another
Yeah.
2,000 or 1,000 or.
But still, it's disappointing though. I think for a lot of people, because when they saw it, first thing you jump to is like, I'm going to get that. It's going to be part of the package.
Yeah.
And now that's not going to be the case.
Yeah. I mean, if you're already dropping 10K, what's another 1,000 or two more for a lightsaber, right? Especially that lightsaber.
Right. And to be clear, it was never part of the package that they listed out.
No, they didn't. That's fair. Yeah. I think people just made a lot of assumptions and drew the lines and went, "Whoa, that's awesome." I think
because why else would you show that?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly. No, you're 100% right. Why would they show that? I mean, even if I can't buy it, maybe it's just a prop that I'll get to use while I'm there or train with it or whatever. And maybe that's still the case. Because they said that you're not going to get to touch it. So I don't know really what's going to happen there. And I don't want to confuse it too. Like they showed the training, which wasn't, and I'm not piling on here. It didn't look exciting. He was just kind of sitting there moving his lightsaber around. There was lights flashing, that kind of thing. I don't think that's connected to the lightsaber itself, right? Because you're not going to get to touch a lightsaber. So, maybe they're two totally different things. It doesn't really make a difference, but all right. Well,
I still hope they show people how it works though. And that you people at least get to see it in action. I think that would be really cool though.
Yeah.
Wow. That is some
Dante
small print.
said, I never had expectation of purchasing a lightsaber anytime soon. I doubt it holds up to hitting anything, and Disney doesn't want to deal with upset customers when the blade inevitably breaks. That's a very good point.
Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely
Very
not.
expensive stuff, right? You're not going to put that in the hand of a 6-year-old and say, don't hit something, because the first thing you do with a lightsaber is go whack something. So
Exactly.
Chef Chris says it means I still don't have 6K to go. Right there with you, buddy.
Glad nothing's changed for you, bud.
Yeah, nothing's changed.
All right. So, hey, before we get into other things, we have a couple new Patreon subscribers. Dan Allen signed up for the After Dark tier. So thank you so much, Dan. And then, of course, a longtime listener of the show, Ash, signed up for our Green Milk tier. So thank you, Ash, for subscribing. And we hope you guys enjoy the content you're getting on Patreon. And your questions will be guaranteed to be answered today. At least Ash as well. I don't think we got one from Dan.
Yeah. Ash's is more like a
Yeah.
a lot of emotion in it.
No, I'm right there with her, too. I'm right there with her, too.
Yeah. But we'll get there in just a second. Okay, so I got a couple questions I want to get out first, and they're for you. So I'm going to put you on the spot on some of these. But
how much do I enjoy trolling you about Loading Great Storm on Twitter?
I shouldn't have ever opened that can of worms originally.
I enjoy it immensely.
Yeah. No, that's not the question. The okay, so these are kind of news related to some extent because stuff that's happened recently. But so let's talk about Kathleen Kennedy. Because I don't know that we talked about it last week or last show. I think.
Yeah, briefly.
But I know that there's there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of discourse around her signing on for 3 more years, and I've noticed a lot of people that were anti Kathleen Kennedy, people that were on record as saying she's gone, she's leaving, it's only a matter of time, and this is, it's been going on for ever since she came in, right? Ever since Disney came in. She's been, quote, on the way out. All right. So it's been this long 6-year saga of people saying this. And yet people still subscribe to this idea that she's leaving, or somehow they have a pulse on what's going on behind the scenes, or they understand the inner workings of what it means to run a company like Lucasfilm that is attached to a company like Disney. Think about the words there.
Right.
And now it feels like people have just backed off that completely. Nobody in our circles, to be honest. But a lot of people have backed off and said, oh, no, I never said that, or I've seen tweets deleted, I've seen posts deleted, I've seen content come off YouTube where they were, adamant this was going to happen. I think at the end of the day,
wow.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think that what this teaches all of us is we just don't know, and you're never going to know as much as you want to know and think you know.
Until someone writes a memoir.
Until somebody does. We're looking at you, Iger. You gotta
give us the spiel.
The background. Yeah, so that was really kind of the only comment I had, but I guess what are your thoughts on Kathleen sticking around? And this kind of segues into the next question about or do you have any concerns around the content?
Right.
Granted, there's definitely feedback for Kathleen Kennedy. I don't think she's in that position as, pristine and doesn't have a smear on her record for some of the stuff that's happened. But who does, right? Who has a perfect record? People are going to make mistakes. We're human. So you think about stuff that's getting canceled. We had Rangers of the Galaxy now has been, quote, unofficially been canceled. Although I think people wrote that off in the minute. Gina Carano was let go.
Oh, Rangers of the New Republic.
Rangers of the New Republic. Thank you. That has not been officially canceled, but I saw some reports just in the last day or two saying that now is. Yeah. We've had, Rogue Squadron disappear. Rian Johnson's trilogy is kind of out in the middle of nowhere to be found at this point. There's a lot of things seem like they're kind of, I wouldn't say falling apart, but things are they're backing up. And at the end of the day, she is the head, and I understand where some of the credit is or some of the fault is being placed, because if I'm a upset customer, I'm going to the manager, right? I'm going to whoever's in charge. They may not be the ones directly doing it, but there should be the person that's responsible. The buck should stop with them to some extent. So I think it is fair to share that criticism of some of this stuff happening. But what are your thoughts kind of on Kathleen Kennedy staying in position here? And as well, on top of that, some of the stuff that we're seeing being peeled back. Are you concerned at all about the state of Star Wars television movies at this time?
Right. I was on the listening end of a pretty passionate discussion about Kathleen Kennedy just yesterday, actually, and how they weren't quite aware that she was signed to a 3-year agreement. So I informed this person, then he was not very thrilled about that, because I think still a lot of anger and bitterness and really, the things left over from the saga. And again, I was listening, but the thing I kept thinking in my head was, okay, you're going to crucify KK for all of the saga stuff, but he didn't want to give any kind of credit for the TV shows or anything. Well, that's exactly. Jon Favreau. That's all these other people. I'm like, well, hold on. No. But she's still executive producer. Well, executive producer doesn't really do well. Executive producers kind of own the budget and they kind of own the movie. And she's the president of Lucasfilm.
And they have a
right?
lot of influence. Sorry, I don't want to.
They
Don't want
do.
you to keep going, but they do have a lot of influence. Believe it or not. Go on.
Right. No, and that's exactly where that was actually the point, is that you can't lay everything at her feet. I think the one mistake that she made in retrospect was that she was very front and center and she was very excited, and they were pushing a new era and they were doing all of these things, and they got super excited and started announcing things that before, prematurely, before they saw the returns on it, before they saw how the reactions were going to be. And so that really tarnished things for a while. And then the lack of cohesion. We've talked about this countless times. The lack of cohesion of the saga, the end of the saga, really has. We're still recovering from it in certain ways, and I think mostly in the film department. Maybe not the TV shows. The TV shows seem to be picking up a lot of steam and having a lot of a lot of good things going on. But so I think that's when I think about Kathleen Kennedy, it's difficult to just say she's the worst, because we've had a lot of content that we really enjoy and content that we're excited to see where we go in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whatever is going on right now, I am a little bit concerned, because again, this is one of these things where they did a bunch of announcements last year and then we've heard nothing from them. Absolutely nothing. And these are some things that I would have expected we'd hear from, soon. I think Disney Plus Day again was a prime example of this. Unless there's something and then there was D23. I was like, okay, well, maybe D23 will have something. This was just in the last week or two, right?
Before Thanksgiving. Flew right by, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely nothing. So these are the things where it's just, what is going on with Star Wars? Is Star Wars really still in this, this kind of getting their feet under them again? Because I thought we were already there. But I think we threw a lot of content all out there that we're going to do all of these great things again. And then now it's like half of them we don't want to talk about. Another quarter of them are still, we're probably in the future anyway, like Acolyte and some of those too. But we don't want to commit to anything now. And that part is really what is not going to go in her favor, because as soon as those things start getting canceled, or, as soon as they, formally cancel them, everybody's going to be right on Kathleen Kennedy's back yet again. And I think on some of that, it's probably justified, and I don't know how involved Kevin Feige is with some of the Feige's in with all this stuff. But again, he's kind of got arm's length from a lot of these things, besides having his name attached to a potential film, but yeah, that's a lot of words out there to say that you get the good, you get the bad.
Take them both, and there you have facts of life.
The facts of life. That's right. But so I am a little bit concerned about where we're going. And I think part of it is because we just had a consistent slate of content in 2021, which was freaking awesome. And part of 22 and 2020 as well. And I got to be honest with you, 2022 is a big open question mark as far as the TV and in the movies.
Right. I mean, on record, on the books, on the calendar, as far as we know, it looks like 2022 is going to be a big year as well.
But what do we have? What do we have that's actually firm?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Book of Boba.
No, and I don't. Let me back up. I misspoke there. If you look at what they've not necessarily on the calendar, but what they've talked about coming out in 2022, the Andor series, Book of Boba Fett, Season 3 of The Mandalorian, potentially Bad Batch 2. These things are all out there, but we don't. And to your point, there is nothing official yet, and that's what's scary. Is like, why are we not talking about these things? In fact, a lot of what we know about these shows isn't even coming from Disney. We know about the production and how far along they are because of all the leaks and the pics and people reporting on, hey, they just wrapped up and I saw them, out there doing their party thing and when it was all done. So we know this is happening. We're just not getting anything official from them. So does that mean, is it a post-production thing? Are there hookups there somewhere or hang-ups somewhere in that? Who knows? But here's where my pulse is on all of this. I think it is a little concerning. I'm not, the sky is falling by any means. Right. I think where I start to really get concerned with content of any type, be it books, comics, TV shows, movies, whatever it may be, when I start to get concerned is when the quality starts to fade and when I don't feel like I'm enjoying what I'm watching or I'm enjoying what I've paid for. And I can't say that has been the case yet with Kathleen Kennedy or Disney Plus, right? I've enjoyed all the movies. I've got problems with them, but they individually, I think they work really well. And that's what we've talked about many times. I'm not going to get into all that. The TV shows have been all great. I liked Resistance, and that was like the only one that I think most people.
And you might be the only one.
I may be the only person. No, there were a lot of people. There's at least 5 of us because we have a little Twitter feed going on, Twitter chat. But
Right.
but I mean, even like Resistance was
Has
probably the
moments.
one
Yeah.
kind of the one that people probably had the most feedback over,
Right.
apart from the Last Jedi. But as far as TV shows go, and cartoons or animation, right? I enjoyed The Bad Batch and season 7 of the Clone Wars, Book of Boba Fett seasons 1, or sorry, Mandalorian seasons 1 and 2. Book of Boba Fett looks great. So from that perspective, I think we're okay. I mean, as long will stuff get delayed? Yeah, potentially. But as long as it's like that World of Warcraft thing. It's like the Blizzard approach, right?
Yeah.
I trust Blizzard to put out good product because they tend to not put anything out unless they're ready to do so. It does mean it sucks because we end up waiting a long time for some games to come out or patches or updates and stuff to come out. But when it comes
Right.
out, it's pretty good, solid stuff.
And
Um,
sometimes it's a swing and a miss. And I
yeah,
think that's the thing we have to understand is that if we're going to try some different things, we're going to try some different styles, and it might not always catch with us. It might not always catch with the broad spectrum of people. It just narrows in on a few, And so I think that's a great point to keep in mind that not everything is going to be a home run. Some things will just be kind of a little dribbler, and for some people, that's going to be great. That's their Star Wars, and it's out there.
yep. All right. Sorry, I didn't mean to go on like a little rant there.
No, it's okay, man. Just keep your soapbox out just in case you need it again.
Yep, I will. Okay, so I got 2 more questions, and I'll make these really quick. Just quick thoughts from you, if you don't mind. We talked about Natasha Bordizzo and her role as Sabine Wren in the Ahsoka series. I think when we originally talked about Ahsoka last year, and when that title was up, right, and that's all we knew prior to season 2 of Mandalorian, we were speculating about, okay, are they going to be? Is this going to be the series that was promised to us, not so much promised, but hinted at the end of Rebels, right? Was this
Right.
going to be the series where they go after and look for uh, Ezra and
Right.
possibly Thrawn? I think with her casting, that seems to be the case for me now at this point. But I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think that's a solid given, or do you think it still could be something else? And it's just them two together, and maybe that's already happened, or it's the prelude to the actual series that's now animated or live action of them out there in God knows where, looking for Ezra and Thrawn.
Right. Yeah. Chef Chris pointed out the subliminal messaging I've got everywhere around me right now with the Ahsoka and Thrawn novels. But it's, as much as I want it, this is the part that I want your kind of thoughts on too. With Rebels, it was an animated series. All the characters were animated. It seems like we should pick that up in a more animated way. That's kind of our traditional way of thinking about things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to get a sequel to that. If we view Rebels was a sequel to Clone Wars, then what is the animated sequel to Rebels? That's one way of thinking. Now, I don't object to doing this though. And I personally believe that it's seeming more and more likely that this is definitely going to be Ahsoka looking for Thrawn. And I truly believe that Ezra is going to be a thing, and that we're going to see Ezra. And if we're going to see Sabine, then we might start to see other parts of Phoenix Squadron. Now, is this going to be a Rebels 2 type of event? It's possible, I guess. I mean, there's elements of it that are definitely coming together that you could do that. And I think a lot of it is if the show is Ahsoka, what is the story we're going to get about Ahsoka? And as we get more focuses, hopefully we get more information about what that series is going to be. Identifying what the narrative that we're going to look for is going to be really key of understanding what the direction of the show might very well be. But how do you feel about that with an animated series maybe picking up in more of a live format? And let's just, for argument's sake, say that the animated sequel of that is completely off the table. It's just going to be Ahsoka. How does that make you feel?
I would be in favor of that.
Conflicted?
No, I actually don't mind. I'm kind of in the camp right now, and I'll probably change my mind once the series comes out or I see it. But I'm of the opinion that I would rather the hunt or the search for Ezra take place in animated form, only because you can do a lot more with animation. And no, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, they've done some amazing things so far in The Mandalorian and all that, but you do kind of have to put some barriers around what you can do and what you can show because of budget and cost and all of that, right?
Right.
It's just money, right? So if you can throw a lot of money at it, then I don't have a problem with it. But if you can't, then I would feel better about this being kind of like the prequel to that series. And, and so it doesn't really take them into the deep, far regions of space or anything, or maybe it's not, you save all the really grandioso type stuff, the visual effects for an animated series. And it would be a way to bring back, the actors and the characters and the style and the look that we fell in love with Rebels. That was kind of a, that Ralph McQuarrie
Right.
original Star Wars look. I miss that, and I'd love to see that again. So that's coming. That's for me. Obviously, you guys know I'm a big Rebels fan, so that's how
Right.
I would prefer to see it. Now, again, I could change my mind depending on how the Ahsoka series goes, or once we get a taste of that and see what it looks like, or realize that they are pumping a lot of money into this, and the special effects are going to be such that they can deliver the story that I'm expecting. But that's I would go either way, but my preference would be animated.
And it's a bit of a hot topic right now because the lesser evil, right, for the latest, the last in the Thrawn trilogy, the Ascendancy trilogy, is potentially tweaking some things. I'm almost to the very end. The book is like it's really, really good. It's
Heavy.
long, but it is really good. It's about a 24-hour listen on Audible. No joke.
24 hours.
24 hours. It's almost 24
wow.
hours long.
Yeah.
No joke. But it's supposedly there's a bit of a debate going on that there's some tweaking going on. I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But if you're interested, you might go out there and do it, which might, kind of rearrange things or maybe give you a different point of view or perspective on the end of Rebels and where we might pick up and what Thrawn's, story is.
Mm.
And with, between the Ascendancy and the Empire and all that good stuff. So it's an interesting idea of where they might go. But I think that's always the thing that we get worried about, though, is that we start tweaking the things. And I don't want to say, Chef Chris again says it, they should be careful messing around with our beloved Rebels. And yeah, it's really a pretty good comment. It's actually pretty true. You have to be really careful. The stuff that people are really passionate about, I'm not saying cater to the fans, but be consistent, right? There's a certain amount of flexibility we're willing to give as fans, but don't slap us in the face with something completely different and take a really hard left turn or something that just seems totally inconsistent or out of character that you have a really hard time making sense of. You have to go develop another little, one-shot comic just to figure out what the hell happened with C-3PO's red arm, that type of thing. I'm not going to let that go.
I didn't recognize them at first.
I didn't recognize them either. They all look alike.
Jeff says, I expect a lot of Chiss and Ahsoka. I wouldn't be surprised to see Scylla. To be honest, audiences seem to like blue people. As silly as that sounds, the aesthetic works. Yes, that is very true. People do like blue people. That would be interesting if they did bring in the Chiss officially, right, into live action. Because apart from Rebels, I don't know that we've had them on the screen before.
I don't think so.
No, I can't think so either. All right, well. Okay, I said that was going to be a short answer and not being a long. All right, last question.
No, hold on. I'm going to give you the last one.
Okay, what is it?
WTF is Andor, man.
I don't know. I have no idea what's going on with Andor.
And this is the problem. So this is the thing about like what's in 2022. What does 2022 look like? We have Book of Boba. We know that's happening. That's the beginning of 2022. Mm-hmm. We think maybe we'll get Mandalorian by the end of 2022, right? November, December. Kenobi, I got to be honest with you, is a huge question mark. If it's a 2022, I'm almost thinking it's a 2023 thing at this point. As weird as that might sound, I have a really sneaking suspicion.
Ahsoka?
No, Kenobi.
What? No.
You
watch your mouth.
I have a feeling that it could be a 2023 thing at this point. That we've had nothing from it. Kind of a little bit concerned about that. Now, just go with me here. So if that's true, then Andor, you could sneak this in with little, advertising and things like that. I mean, they'd have a marketing campaign, but you could squeeze this towards the middle of the year because there's no Bad Batch 2 coming out this year or next year. I mean, that's just not reasonable to expect, I don't think. And unless they've already had something brewing, which is entirely possible.
They'll release, I'm calling it right now. Bad Batch will come out December 29th, 2022.
No, it won't. Because
I'm kidding. That was the whole Book of Boba Fett thing.
Oh, okay. Because I was about to say Mandalorian probably running through that.
Oh, sorry. Stupid joke. Go ahead.
Right. No, I'm done. It just goes back to the same thing we were talking about before. Like, what does next year's schedule look like? Mm-hmm. I have no idea. Whereas it feels like there's 1,000 Marvel projects out there, although most of them don't even have a year on them. So take that for what it's worth.
I mean,
we've had these things for over a year now. We still have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. So what I was going to say is, if they don't release, okay, we're talking about what scares us or what makes us worry. If Kenobi doesn't come out next year, I'm concerned. Like, there's no reason that should not be out at that point. I mean, the movies don't even take that long in post production. I get COVID was going on and all of that, but I mean, we got stuff coming out now. Movies are being released, although, okay, now I'm poking holes in my own theories here, but I would have a concern, because that just doesn't add up, right? That we would suddenly not get that show that's been wrapped up for so long now,
Right.
in next year at some point.
Now, the saving grace, and once again, we have Celebration in May. So Celebration is going to be that really important fulcrum, if you will, that pivot point, right? Of, are we going to get enough there that is going to really amp us up for the rest of 22? Or is that starting to look really more into 2023, end of 2022, beginning of 2023? And I really hope Celebration delivers some big announcements for 2022 besides The Mandalorian Season 3.
Yeah. Dante says that new girl just rumored to be cast in Ahsoka looks like she could be a Chiss. That is a great observation. And we didn't bring it up because it is just a rumor, although we brought up the Sabine one. But this one just broke, I think, today, or I think it was this morning. They showed, and I forget the actress's name, so I apologize for that. But yeah, she does look like she could be a Chiss. And then Jeff said, agreed. Prime candidate to be painted blue, no doubt. So the question, I think, really is like, which Jeff, between you and I, Jonesy, would make a better Chiss?
Oh,
I'm going to say no. Chiss don't wear hats, but you have the long hair. You've got the beard. I mean, can you imagine like a blue Chiss with your beard?
Okay. Well, and then the Goldsboro,
Chef's kiss.
Or I'm sorry, the out of print tees, $150 Thrawn special edition.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Where it's like, I didn't realize Thrawn went through a goth stage, because I mean, he's got like the emo, disheveled hair.
He does, yeah.
A little bit longer. It's
like a Markion Rowe, Kylo Ren-ish.
Yeah.
Take on him.
Yeah, it's a really not what I expected the Chiss to look like. We always expected them to look a lot more like Imperials, right? A very fine dress and everything else, and all of the way they've decorated the uniform. I know we've seen some of that before, but yeah, I just realized he was.
Ron had the long hair. Remember in the comic book when
he did.
He had the long hair, and he had the chest like you do, like that bare chest. It's just like, bam, I'm kidding.
Wow.
I've never seen his chest. Well, I know a lot of people have, but I am not one of those people.
Wow, I don't even know how to take that.
Okay. All right,
okay. I tell you what, we're 45 minutes in. We should get to some listener questions here, because we got a bunch. All right. So since Jeff has been running his mouth about painting people blue, let's do his question first. This is on the High Republic. So Albert, what is your favorite Star Wars audiobook performance, and why is it Markion Rowe? And then I guess follow up, how do you feel about Mark Thompson's performance of Markion Rowe specifically?
Yeah, I did pull up the questions, pre-did them all for the Patreon.
Man, look at you.
I know. I just had some time to do. I had some time to do this. Okay, so this is probably more in your realm, honestly, because you do the audiobooks. I have heard Markion Rowe. I don't have a problem with it. It wasn't the voice that I had when I read Light of the Jedi originally. But I don't dislike Markion Rowe as performed by Mark Thompson. He plays him as way more moody. I don't know what there's probably a better term than that. Yeah. My simple mind can't think of it right now, but he definitely plays him more along those lines than I had in my head. In my head, he was more like a Thrawn, more calculated, more animated too. Like, as far as I recall, the performance by Thompson is more reserved, and which makes it calculating and just as, maybe as evil, if you will. But I had a more kind of, I don't know, just more forward in terms of how he's delivering his lines, and not as slow paced. Like, he had more pace to his line deliveries in my head. So again, I guess I don't dislike the performance. I know some people had some problems with it. I think it's great. It's very consistent. I love the fact that they carried it over into Tempest Runner. So we had, that consistency still there. Now I can't not hear that voice though, right? Even as I'm reading the comics, I had my own voices, but that's completely been superseded by Thompson's voices, which is just fine. I don't have a problem with it. But what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I'm disappointed in Jeff, because Mark Thompson's best performance is always Chewbacca. And
that's not true. I know, I've listened to enough books to know That's some BS right there, sir. Thank you, though. Nice try.
You know what? My favorite performance, it has to be Thrawn, and it has to be in the Lesser Evil audiobook I'm listening to right now. And here's why. So first of all, the way he does Thrawn, man, it's melodic. It is so calm and soothing. It's like ASMR, man. You could just listen to this all day long. But what's really cool about it, though, is in this part of the book, Thrawn is acting very distressed. Like he has this very distressed and is almost a distraught. It's very unlike Thrawn in really most anything else we've had in an audiobook format of in the current Timothy Zahn novels. And it's really cool that we're getting that Mark Thompson can take what is normally a very consistent and somewhat monotonous character as far in monotone type of character and actually put inflection and actually have things that make you feel like he is feeling and that he's reacting and that he's got emotion. And it's really strange to have some of that because it's just not how we equate that to Thrawn in the first place. But also that he can take that character and mold it like that. Mark Thompson is by far my favorite one. Although I got to shout out there to Jonathan Davis and Dan Bittner, who are also fantastic with the audiobooks. They really, really do a fantastic job. I do not, one of the characters besides Chewbacca that I don't think anybody quite could get right is always Han Solo. I don't think I've heard one Han Solo that I thought was like really, really good. Most of them are kind of odd. I don't even know how to explain it. It's not my cup of tea.
Yeah. So I guess to answer the question of which has been my favorite, apart from Mark Hamill, I liked what's the woman who did Ahsoka, or not Ahsoka, the woman who I like the Ahsoka performance.
January LaVoy.
No, is it January LaVoy? No, I meant the Ventress from.
Ooh,
come on, $25,000 pyramid.
Dark Disciple.
Yeah, Dark Disciple. Thank you. I liked her performance in that. I thought that was really good. And the other one that stands, I do like Mark Thompson's, not Luke Skywalker, his Kenobi.
Yeah, I agree.
He seems pretty consistent there.
And that's worked really well, especially for the High Republic. Like the voices that we have, like Estelle and Geos and things like that, have been really, really good.
Yeah.
And I do. I mean, God, there's so many, but January LaVoy really has done a fantastic job in the past as well. And from a female perspective, she is absolutely my favorite female audiobook. Yeah, personality, I guess.
Voice actress.
Performer. Yeah, there you go.
Voice performer. How about that?
All right, cool. Yeah, thanks, Jeff, for the question.
Okay, next question comes from Chef Chris. Do you believe Elzar Mann will end up being an anti-hero through the High Republic events? It seems to fit his personality. He goes on to say that he's always doing something that he shouldn't be doing, that the Jedi don't agree with, and he just kind of wants to hear our take on Elzar Mann, all things Elzar Mann.
Well, you're the Elzar Mann authoritative of the Cantina cast here, but I think anti-hero. I don't know if I agree with the anti-hero label. But definitely the one, I think Rogue always kind of, I think more like Kyle Katarn back in the EU, right? That's the kind of character that I get in my mind with when I think about Elzar Mann. And Kyle Katarn was always kind of on the edge sometimes, but in the end, eventually kind of made the right decision, although it took a long way for him to get there, right? And a lot of back and forth. And so that's kind of what I equate Elzar Mann to. So again, more roguish and just pushing against the system, more so than an anti-hero. Exactly. Now, is he going to go dark and things like that? Those are probably a whole different set of questions as far as if you lump that into what an anti-hero is. Yeah. But yeah, I'll stop there. What's your opinion so far?
Yeah, he's definitely not your average Jedi. And I think that's why a lot of people have really gravitated to him more than some of the bigger characters, to be honest.
Yeah, he's more human. Yeah.
He's more human. Same thing
Flawed.
with yeah, exactly. Same thing with Bell, right? You can associate and relate to Bell a lot more because he's not perfect and he doesn't pretend to be, and you get to hear more about his faults. I mean, we saw Stellan Geos, and we've never heard anything really from. Oh yeah, we've heard stuff from Avar Chris as well, but it's tempered, right? Those guys kind of really bare their soul, and that's what we as readers tend to gravitate to because we can relate in a lot of different ways, right? With those emotions and thoughts and stuff that they're sharing with us. So from that perspective, I like the fact that he is more grounded. He seems like your everyday kind of dude, and I'm using clear quotes here, dude, right? Who just
Right.
happens to be force sensitive as well. The charm in him is that he does go against the grain. He's not traditional. He's unconventional. He is,
He's willing to step outside the box. Yeah.
exactly. You called him a rogue. I think we've used the word maverick to describe him as well.
Yeah.
And he's unorthodox in his ways. And I think for all of, when we think about the Jedi during the prequel era, that would never fly, right? I mean, they wouldn't even let Anakin fly. He was, a little too far out there at times for some of them and the things that he would do. But here, he's almost given the liberty to do so, right? They almost do encourage him. They don't hold him back he's probably held himself back more than the council's probably held him back from advancing. But he does tend to have some liberty with what he can do. And so
Right.
that is interesting in itself, but it also plays into that next part, what you said, which is we don't know where he's going to go. At first, I always thought he was kind of like the red herring. They're playing him up to be bad, but he's really not going to be. Well, that was a little bit later. Originally, I said he's going to turn to the dark side. Like I was all in, hook and sinker. This is there's a lot of red flags going on here with Elzar Mann. Things are going to really turn bad for him. When Ty York came in, that kind of changed things for me, right? She kind of grounded him, neutralized him a little bit, or at least balanced him out. How about that? Probably not neutralized, balanced him out a little bit more. So I think he's going to be allowed to, be able to be who he is, have Ty kind of ground him still in reality. Whether or not he stays with the Jedi Order, though, I don't know. Like I can see a path of him and Ty going off on their own and doing their own thing and living in this kind of crazy maverick world where they hated each other at first and now can't be apart from each other. Although that would hurt Avar Chris's feelings.
Well, does she really care anymore?
Man. No,
does she
even
care anymore?
No, she doesn't. She's over that dude. It's so complicated, which is what I like about this. And they haven't really given us a lot of information about these relationships. So hopefully we'll get more in the Fallen Star.
Yeah, and shout out to Dante in the chat because he brought up Kip Duron, which is another fantastic one. I had someone in my mind, I was like, I can't figure out who it is. And yeah, Kip Duron was a really good example and I think his Ty York was Jaina Solo, I believe, if I remember this all correctly, right? So they had that balance and they had that back and forth of trusting each other, but a little bit of dissonance between them, and it made for a really good story. But in the end, that she was able to go to him as a someone who understood her and that was willing to not judge in those types of things. So yeah, quick shout out to Dante. That was a really, really good example. Kip Duron's a fantastic example.
Yep. Dante says Kip went dark really hard in a moment and had to try to live with it and pay the penance the rest of his life.
And people didn't forget about it either. Yeah.
Jeff says, I just hope Elzar Mann ends up a zoologist.
Zoologist.
It's a zoologist.
He's a zoologist. He's not going to run a zoo.
He is qualified. Yes, that he is.
All right. Thanks, Chris, for the question. All right. Another Patreon question from Risk Bayless on the Book of Boba Fett. What's the story on the giant spiders in the Boba trailer? They're creepy.
That was exciting. Yeah, the spiders. Okay. So these are the Bomar monks. And I never realized, sometimes we do the show and I forget that, sometimes people, we actually have a lot
we talked a little bit about this one.
We do. What I was going to say is a lot of people listen to the show and they listen to it because they like listening to it, but they don't always have all the background, and we just start talking like they do. And I apologize if that ever happens.
Or that we know something every once in a while.
Right, exactly. But so the Bomar monks. Okay, so I'll give you a quick rundown on the Legends version of it, and this will be really high level. And I actually, when this question came up, I thought about. Try to remember what the history was, but then it actually got me thinking about a theory now that I thought would be interesting that we've not talked about. I know, right? So
we're already at an hour.
Get your hats on, folks. Okay, no. So the Bomar monks, they came to Tatooine. Why they came to Tatooine, I don't know, but they came to Tatooine hundreds of years before we see them in Return of the Jedi,
right?
And their whole point, their whole lot in life, where they were monks that lived in that monastery, which was Jabba's palace, and they were seeking enlightenment, right? So they were trying to think about the cosmos and theorize on whatever. Right? They were trying to reach that height of mental enlightenment at some point, and so they would do away with their senses. So they didn't, they would figure out a way to not necessarily need smell or taste and all of that. And when they got to this certain point,
the shackles and the inhibitions of life, or all of the temptations of life, all of that stuff. Yeah.
No
They
longer
wanted to
needed.
right.
Right. And so at that point, all you were was a mind, right? And so when they got to that point, they went through this process where they would have their brains removed, and they were put into these droids. And those droids are, I forget what they are, if they're like cleaning droids or maintenance droids, it doesn't matter. But they found a way to put that their minds inside those capsules, those glass capsules you see that spiders carrying around. And that would be how they got around. Now, what they were doing, moving around, I have no idea, because if your whole point is enlightenment, you would just be in a jar, kind of like.
I hope there's some UV protection.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like,
that's gonna be a hell of a sunburn.
That's the whole thing. It's like, of all the planets that you go to, why
Well-
would you go to the hottest planet in the world or in the galaxy? It's not the hottest, but why would you go to a hot planet when you could go to like Alderaan or that was a bad choice. You know, somewhere like California. Why not go to California where the weather's always really nice? You don't have to worry about sand people and all kinds of other stuff. But that was the point. Is they would do that. They would get their minds put in there. Now, here's where in Legends it went a totally different direction, because Bib Fortuna was he made a monk, or did they take his brain? I forget now if he was. I don't think he was seeking enlightenment.
No,
But they ended up taking his head and brain and sticking it in a jar as well, right?
Yeah, I think they just enlightened him. Yeah,
right. Self-enlightenment, or not self-inflicted, but inflicted enlightenment. I don't know, whatever it is.
Now, I don't think the whole Bomar Order though was on Tatooine. I thought they still had other places in the galaxy.
They do. No, those guys settled there, right?
Okay,
they were elsewhere.
Oh, okay, you're saying in general, why would you settle on Tatooine?
Why would you go there of all the places you can go to?
I heard it was a great moisture farm. They got confused.
Maybe. All right.
But yeah, even in Jabba's palace, they were really secured down. Like I think they had like a triple wall or some sort of like security, so no one could get down there. It was really their lair. I don't know if they built that or not. The other interesting thing though is that it wasn't just a spider droid though. They had some with 4 and they had some with 6. So it was that's just the one that we've seen, and the one that they showed is kind of an homage to it in the trailer. But they did have other configurations of those droids for really just for travel and for moving around.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. All right. Yep. Well, thank you. All right. So here's where my crazy theory is, though. So there is a comic book that I remember that came out in like 1997, 1998, like late 90s. And it had to do with Jabba, and I forget, it was a terrible comic. I didn't really enjoy it. But the one thing that stood out for me is the Bomar monks were actually open to healing people. Like anybody that wanted to come by the palace, by their temple or whatever, they would be more than willing to go out and heal them up, free of charge, just as a service to the community, if you will, right? And that comic, I remember at one point.
I see where you're going with this.
Yeah. So at one point, there's some guy that was shot or whatever, and like he was on death's door, and they healed him up, and they said, "Here, now go change. We brought you back to life. Go live a better life and be good," and that kind of thing. And of course, he ends up being like, I think he pairs up with Jabba, and he does more horrible stuff. But where I was going with this theory is like, what if the Bomar monks were the ones that rescued Boba Fett, brought him in, and rehabilitated him there in the palace while Bib Fortuna was there, and that's what caused some animosity between him and Bib. Maybe Bib didn't want him rehabilitated, and all that. So that would create the bad blood if there were any. That would then lead to what we see at the end of season 2, where he comes in and just shoots Boba Fett in cold blood for no reason, right? We don't even realize, we don't know why that happened, but something had to have happened.
Well, if you read the comics, there's a little bit there.
Is there?
A little bit, yeah. In War of the Bounty Hunters. Yeah.
Oh, War of the Bounty Hunters. Yeah, I haven't read that series. Yeah. But that's kind of where my head went. So whether that all pans out, who knows? But
I think it's interesting. Of all the theories you've thrown out there, that actually seems like one of the more possible ones.
Well, it only took 4 years. Well, you're welcome.
Yeah. It wasn't, it hasn't been since 1997, at least. Hasn't been 14. So, or
so
20,
the last,
how long is 97? 28 years?
It took me that long to come up with that one. But
way too long. Math is hard.
The last thing I'll say about the Bomar monks is when Jabba came in, as far as I remember, he kind of like took over the palace. But he allowed them to be there, and they were mutually were allowed to stay there. So that's why you see that little spider guy walking around in Return of the Jedi. And so we have no reason to believe that they're not there after. Well, they are there. They're there after the sail barge blew up and all that. So it could be possible that that's how he gets brought back and nursed to health.
Cool.
Okay. All right, cool stuff. Thank you, Iris Bayless, Patreon, for that question. All right, your buddy Uthal says, will we see Maul or even a direct run-in of Crimson Dawn with Obi-Wan in the Kenobi series? Oh,
Maul's
boy.
Maul's. Oh yeah, you crack your knuckles for this one. Maul's an interesting one. I don't think we need to see. We should not see Maul and Obi-Wan together, or really Maul to have any idea who that Kenobi is still alive, because otherwise it completely cheapens everything we see in Rebels. I think so. I'm going to go with a hard no on Maul. Now, Crimson Dawn, it's possible that we would see something about that. I think the thing, I hate going back to this because I go to this well a lot. Kenobi is 6 episodes, only 6 episodes. And we already know we have Darth Vader all over the place. Crimson Dawn has apparently been quiet for a number of years, and so I think by the time we get to Kenobi, I'm thinking the events of Solo have probably happened or they're close to. So I don't know that there's a relevant story there for Crimson Dawn to be to kind of come into play to where it would really impact what we want to know between Obi-Wan and Luke, the Lars family, Vader, anybody else that's kind of in the circle here of what's going on, or even a Boba Fett, or whatever else is going on in Tatooine at this time.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say, really, I think there's a very, very, very small chance, and really, I'm going to go with 0, that Maul and Crimson Dawn are even mentioned in the Kenobi series for the most part.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think although it would be really cool, given there's not that much time to talk about it, and you got to remember, like, what is at some point somebody had the idea of there is a story that we have to tell, right?
Right.
We've got to tell this story between Anakin and Kenobi, or Vader and Kenobi, however you want to look at it. And with 6 episodes, it just doesn't seem like there's enough runway there for them to get into a lot of things. Now, could they put Easter eggs in there or hint at things that maybe expand into another series down the road where it's heavily focused on Darth Maul or heavily focused on Crimson Dawn and all that? I think that's possible. I mean, they could just make a reference to it, right? So we know that they're there, they're active.
Yeah, those are always fun. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're fun, right? Yeah. That would be more likely the scenario rather than how do you insert now Darth Maul into a story between Kenobi and Vader. I think there's still a story, although we've gotten a lot of it. There is a story between Kenobi and Maul, and maybe that's still to be told or not. But yeah, I just don't know that it makes sense for them to stick it in there. I mean, it's a good thought. I'd love to have it. And if this was a 12, 18 episode type thing or whatever, 2 seasons, then I'd be like, oh yeah, that's definitely on the table. But time is precious, and whatever that story is, they've got a lot of stuff to unpack and get us caught up on to get this, this rematch that's going to happen at some point, get us to that point, right? They've got to get through all of that. So not likely,
okay.
But.
So aside from an Easter egg, % that we would see Maul and or Crimson Dawn in the Kenobi series?
Seeing them, no. Reference, so I would say no. I'll give it a 5% chance.
So you're firmly in the camp of really Easter egg, and that's about the only chance we've got.
Easter egg reference at most.
Yeah, I'm on board with that.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Right. Thank you, Uthal. Appreciate it. All right, Lucid Truth, another Patreon. This is about Thrawn. So what is your theory on the story of Thrawn, on the Thrawn trilogy being adapted into canon? How do they do it? What are the characters that replace characters from the original? He says, you got my mind going when you mentioned a brief idea a few months back. I personally don't need it to be exact, but I think leveraging the story with Ahsoka taking over for Luke would be really cool.
So, boy, how much time do we have?
Yeah, this has got a lot to unpack, or it could be. We really need to spend time. We really need to spend time on Thrawn at some point.
We do.
There's enough. There's so much there now that we probably need to go back and look at the 2 trilogies we've got.
Yeah, no, for sure. We need to get into that too. Okay, so I'll say this. This was one of the questions I thought we've probably talked about it just enough that we probably should do more than answer in a question, because there is a lot here. I mean, we're talking about a trilogy of 3 books, a lot of nuance, a lot of plot development and character developments, a lot of characters that we've not characters we don't even talk about. I forget, someone brings up one of them later on. We'll talk about them.
Mm-hmm.
Who was that brought that guy up? The general, the Saul Guerrero guy, whatever. Okay. No, it's not. It was Cab. Of course it was.
Yeah. Garm del Iblis.
Iblis, yeah. So,
Yeah.
but characters like that, right? Like, I don't know. There's in a one for one now. I would think Saul Guerrero would be somebody that would be almost identical in terms of who they were. But so we probably should. I would like to do this. Maybe it's a Patreon thing, where we kind of get into recasting and reimagining the story in today's world. But so the reason I brought this up because we got the reference of Wayland right in the end of the Bad Batch,
Right.
and that is the temple that had all of the Sith weapons, and there was the Guardian, which Sabayoth killed, and all that, right? If we had to go back and recast all of that, I think what we had said at the time was that Sabayoth would be somebody like a Snoke. Excuse me. They're both clones. They both are force sensitive. We don't know what that version of uh, Snoke that we see come Force Awakens doesn't seem like he's necessarily crazy, but there could be a version of him that existed that was very similar to Sabayoth, right? They could easily explain that as this guy was really far out there.
Right.
Where I think it gets kind of hairy and messy for them to kind of do excuse me, where they get in where it's kind of messy for them to try to do a one for one is we don't have Sabayoth looking for like Luke and Leia. We don't have the kids, right? He was
Right.
it was hellbent on trying to get the kids to come over and teach them. But we do have characters like, replacements for like Talon Card. I,
Mhm.
I'm trying to think of who would be like a really good cast for that. They could be it could be a new character. They could introduce Talon Card. I don't see why not.
Right.
There's no reason why he couldn't be. I mean, they introduced the two ladies from the Bad Batch, the Marquez sisters.
Right.
I was trying to think of what's his name. Hondo doesn't feel like a fit. Personality wise, he's not at all like that.
Hondo's a fit everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, Hondo could go anywhere. I think the idea of Ahsoka being in Luke's place though is an interesting concept. I think it would bring Ahsoka to the forefront in a way that I don't, a lot of us weren't expecting.
Right.
But why couldn't you do Luke there as well?
Right. Well, I think it's more about like what's in front of us, right? It seems like the Ahsoka Thrawn connection. I think here's the other interesting thing about Ahsoka is remember the the first canon Thrawn trilogy. Anakin and Thrawn know each other. Like they met and they went on they kind of went on this little mission type of thing with each other, General Skywalker and Thrawn. And he references all the time. He remembers General Skywalker. And I think that's an interesting dynamic if you have Thrawn and Ahsoka kind of more face to face, and something about Anakin comes up, right? It's just that depth of character and the depth between the characters that you can still explore and really do that in a really fun way. And that's why I'm excited about Ahsoka, not only because we might see some of the Rebel stuff come to life, but just because there's a lot of loaded stuff in the background that we haven't talked about in a really long time because those books are several years old at this point. But there were still really good things that happened during the Clone War era. So I think those are things. I'm terrible at finding who's the right actor for this or who's the right actor for that. I'm awful at that kind of stuff, but I am excited about just the layers that we might get for each one of these.
Well, the other thing too is there's things like in the Rise of Skywalker, right? The fleet could that have been when we saw that original trailer, we talked about the potentially that being the Katana fleet that was lost,
Right.
and why couldn't they say, oh yeah, that was the fleet that took off, and
Well, I think
Thrawn's not a part of it, but
I think in canon they've already said that's not the Katana fleet though.
did they really?
In a roundabout way, I think that has. I'd have to
Oh,
go find the source. Don't
okay.
quote me
Well,
on it. But I
darn it.
think the way that it was positioned I think Palpatine even said it something about what it was. Ah, crap, I can't remember.
All right. Well, thanks for shooting that one down. But I mean, they could still say the Katana fleet exists, and we can have that whole storyline.
Sure.
There's nothing to say that those.
No, right. Yeah.
whatever-
These things. Yeah. And I think the point is great by Loose Street. These things will have to adapt into a different way. And I think that's all right. I think it's okay bringing the things from Heir of the Empire, that series of books, and having them live on a different way in a tweaked way. I think is totally cool. I think that's fine because we're not going to get that story. We're just not.
Do you
It's not
remember?
possible.
Do you remember back when we talked about? And I don't know if you were. I don't know if you were on the show yet, but at one point we were talking about when the Last Jedi was coming out, And it was right after The Force Awakens, of course. We were speculating on why Luke was isolated and all that. You remember what I was saying was the reason why he was so mad? Yes, it was because of the Jedi Temple, and he lost the Jedi Temple, and his nephew went to the dark side, and he almost tried to kill him. We find that in The Last Jedi. But do you remember my main reason why Luke was so down?
I remember listening to it. I can't remember the exact reason.
So my theory was that he actually had a lover, a wife, Mara Jade, potentially, and that she was one of the ones that died in the temple. Like, she was one of the people that was there training, and so he lost everything, including a character like Mara Jade. So, would they introduce Mara Jade into that if they went with the Luke? If they went with Luke as Luke in that series, would he run into somebody like the Emperor's Hand and be tracked and all that? It was a very interesting, much as some people don't like Mara Jade, I always thought that was all fascinating stuff. And the fact that their relationship changed to the point where they, got married in tuxedos and all that. That was kind of weird. But
I really like that theory. I think I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I think the only concern I have about that is that does that cheapen and really screw with Luke Skywalker even more in Last Jedi? Does that just make things worse from that regard? Because then he's not telling Rey what's going on. He's hiding more stuff. He's lying again, by omission, I guess. They're trying to protect her and the folly of the Jedi and all this other stuff. Does that just make things worse, though, if you were to introduce that kind of story?
I guess it doesn't for me, but I can see where some people would feel that way.
It's inserting more story where we know there's story missing, but sometimes it feels like maybe are we interjecting the right story to fill that gap? And I think that's my only concern about it. I like the idea. I want Mara Jade somehow to come back into canon. I struggle to see how exactly that will happen, because having her not end up with Luke Skywalker seems like that would be really difficult to really handle for any of the longtime fans. I want to call it hardcore because most people know who Mara Jade is if they've been following Star Wars for 30 years. And that would be a bit of a tough one for her to end up in some other kind of form or fashion.
Yeah.
So handling that character a bit with care and a little bit of white gloves at times, I think that's to be really carefully planned.
Yep. Okay.
All right. Thanks,
we can do some more on that another time. Okay, next up is Ash. So here's her question. Where is my Acolyte? Now, be careful how you speak about this, because she's very, very passionate about the Acolyte and was looking forward to something being announced, shown, whatever, as we all were, right, during Disney Day Plus. And what didn't happen, boy, I got an earful. But what did you? What are your thoughts on that, and what's going on with that show?
No, I'm right there with her. Where the hell is it? Leaving the investor call last year, this was one of the things I think had the most promise and the most interesting ideas that you talk about an open slate, right? And bringing a dark side character and telling the story of the dark side in a very different way, in a potentially much more personal way, and a different perspective on that, I think is really, really cool. And again, we know so little about it that everything I just said is complete conjecture anyway, but I'm right there with her because, man, this is the most exciting idea that's out there. We just have no idea what the hell this idea actually means. Although we see the promise in it, especially when you look at what we saw with Palpatine in Rise of Skywalker, you could integrate some of that. There's a whole slew of ways that you could go about this. And who is the Acolyte, right? And you could do that from more of a traditional perspective of characters that we know, or you could do it with a completely new set of characters that we've been introduced to. I mean, maybe you even go the route of like what was it? Force Unleashed. What is his name? Galen Merrick. Is that right? Galen. I don't know. Whatever his name was. Starkiller. That's another way to bring him back into canon too. I think you're on mute, buddy.
There. No, I'm not.
Hey, there you are.
Sorry, I had a cough, and so I've been trying to go on mute and it wasn't thinking. Galen Merrick is right. Starkiller.
Okay. Yeah. So no, I want to know where it is too. That was one of the things I thought we would get something on at Disney Plus Day.
Yeah, and I'll rehash what I said about the Acolyte, I guess, when we were talking about Disney Plus Day.
Acolyte, my friend. Acolyte.
It's
not a battery.
It's an alkaline battery. No, so Acolyte. What I said then at the time was I don't think they're going to. I mean, it's she's writing it and it's in production of at some sort, some level. However, I really think they're holding off on. I think some of it is being tied to the High Republic and where the course of those books go. Whether we get a Phase 4 or not, or the direction. I mean, I think they've gotten the whole story already outlined, but they may want to come up with an animated series at some point or expand this into additional books, and all of that may or may not play into it. But I wouldn't want to put a flag in the ground, especially not now. To say that, oh, this is 3 years from now, this is when it's coming out. I think it's just it's a slow burn. It's out there. We know it's coming. I know people are really excited about it as much as we are with just about everything that's been announced already. But this is one of those ones that I think people have been dying for because it's just content we've never really had before, right? We've never had a series like this or a story potentially being told from this perspective. For them to suddenly pull this one out for some reason, or put a stake in the ground and jeopardize that later down the road, I don't think they want to do that. I think they're kind of holding their cards to their chest on this one for a little bit.
Yeah, and Chef Chris has a good question, and I can't remember. I was going to ask you this: when does Acolyte actually take place? Did we get a timeline on that?
Yeah, it's I want to say, was it 100 years before, 200 years, 100? I think it's like 100 years before.
Okay, so
the Phantom Menace.
High Republic-ish in timeline.
Yeah, it's at the tail end. The fall, like after the fallout of the High Republic, is when this will take a place.
Okay.
So I've heard everything from 50 to 100 years, and then we don't know what the time frame of the series is either, right? So I mean, it could be a longer. It could lead. I don't think it's going to be like a Rogue One where it literally takes you right into Episode 4. I don't think we're going to see that transition into the prequel trilogy, but I think they're going to do enough to set up where where Palpatine is and all of that, and where the Jedi Order is at that point, so that is familiar for us when we get into the prequel trilogy.
Okay, what are the odds on it being Darth Plagueis?
I
mean, if you're in that timeline, you gotta. I think if you're in that timeline, you got to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to. I don't see why not. The only thing that I would think they would do is they could end it where it is 100 years before, and we get to see Plagueis, and then we still have that block of time between when Plagueis is introduced and some point when Sidious comes into power, that is saved or shelved for another series that comes out, right? Maybe they go back and redo or canonize that Plagueis novel and all the events that happened there with Tenebrous and Plagueis, and then finding Palpatine, and then Palpatine finding Maul, and maybe they give us some of that in that series. But I would say you have to mention those characters. You don't have to. But for us as Star Wars fans, yeah, we know that. We know it. We loved it when it came out. We'd want to see that. So,
well, and you're flirting with the timelines now, where these things have to. There's a period where things have to start happening, right? If we're 50 to 100 years before that, even 100, we know that the Sith characters tend to be very, very old. They last for a really long time. They somehow preserve themselves in these mysterious ways, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's just on the table, and I think at some point, Plagueis has got to come back around. I know we're getting the Legends book reissued, which I thought was pretty fun.
I'm telling
interesting.
You. Yeah.
But I don't. Do you really put, how much stock do you put in that? Because I mean, we've had the Bane books released, as well. We've had Shatterpoint, which I guess is probably less important as far as major milestone type of things, and then in the what we would maybe want in canon. But do you put a lot of stock of, we're releasing Legends content because it's going to fit in the future? Because I think there's a risk there if you do, and there's too stark of a difference if you really were to follow through with it.
Yeah, I think only from a reference standpoint, right? From the introduction of characters or for the namesakes themselves, I don't put stock into, we're going to retell this story, so we're giving you the novelization first off. I don't believe that is the case. But for them to release Bane and the re-releasing the Heir to the Empire trilogy, it just seems like, I get it. It's time. It's a really cool homage, and we get to have these new versions of them and all that. But I don't know, man. It just seems like it's too coincidental that they're doing select books, and the books that they are choosing are things that could potentially play into stuff that we're seeing, or have been mildly referenced, or potentially could be mildly referenced here at some point down the road. I just find that too coincidental. So so only for references, right? For reference sake, I don't think they're going to go rehash or retell all these stories as they were written originally, 10, 20, 30 years ago, or whatever.
Right.
But
Yeah, Dante had a nice quote out there. Give me the Jaina Solo book. If Dante, if there was a book title that came out and they gave us nothing else, no cover art, no story, no blurb, nothing like that, and it was called Sword of the Jedi, I would flip my ever loving mind. I swear to God, I would be completely head over heels, like just mind blown if they were to do that with the Sword of the Jedi. For those that don't know, that's what they called Jaina Solo at the end.
I liked her.
I liked Jaina Solo. I thought she was a cool character.
Yeah.
Okay. We knew it was coming. Our buddy Cab. We have a few special people in Discord, and they're Patreon, so we have to love them. But Cab is one of these people. Where's my boy Garm Bel Iblis in canon?
He doesn't exist as far as I know.
Right.
Does he need to? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
So we may have to back up and give just a really super high level. There's a bunch of stuff out there for Garb, but just who he was and kind of what he, because you made a comment at the beginning of the show, is he kind of the original Saw Gerrera?
Yeah.
So do you have a real quick just overview of who this guy is?
So imagine somebody like Saw Gerrera who was really skeptical of Mon Mothma coming into power, right? Like after the fall of, after the Empire was taken down and Palpatine was gone, that left Mon Mothma. And again, this is Legends, right? So we're not talking canon. So I want to be clear. He was worried that Mothra was basically going to become the next emperor, and so he was really skeptical about that. At the same time, he had no love for the Empire, and so to kind of summarize what happened in Heir to the Empire, that whole the Thrawn trilogy, he kind of went in different phases. He was he was enlisted at some point for help. He did help out the rebels. Then he goes on to become a general, and I think at the very end, he's in the big space battle dogfight, right, as the general leading the rebel troops and Rebel Alliance, right. New Rebel, or was it New Alliance at the time? So I'm trying to think of like, and it's been a while since I've read these books. I do apologize, but that's the gist of it. I'm trying to think of like personality wise, he wasn't as crazy as like a Saw Gerrera.
It wasn't near as extreme, right?
He wasn't as extreme, but he was very militant in that regard. I'm trying to think what else he did. I mean, that's kind of the high points. He was a very notable character. I mean, he was in all three of the books, or at least two of the books. I think he came in Dark Force Rising is when he came in.
Right.
And then went into Last Command. And then I want to say he was in books after that as well, too. Like, I mean, he
I believe
up.
so. I think he was in some comics as well. And in some books. Yeah, I mean, he appeared throughout the EU. So
yes. Yeah, and that's what we're talking about. Like there were some like staple characters that if you were in the EU, you knew who this guy was, right? May not remember every detail, but you knew who this guy was or at some point, like a Talon Card or Mara Jade. And these are characters that we would love to see in canon. And now that they've gotten this, they're kind of toying around with all of these timelines and these new series that are coming out. I think there's an opportunity for them to introduce these characters, at least in name, if nothing else. But this one is one of the ones that, unfortunately, I feel it's like he's just too close to Saw Gerrera in terms of who he is and how he acts it. I wonder if he would be a prime candidate. I mean, there's probably other characters out there. I mean, you could say the same argument about like a Talon Card, right? Yeah. People would just compare him to like a Lando or, a Lando, a cross between Lando and Han Solo.
We've really not had any like crossover defections really in the new canon with people leaving the Empire, the Imperial Remnant, and that type of thing, and going to work for the Alliance or being convinced to come over. We haven't had any of that. There was not super prevalent in EU, but there were several major characters that had that lineage that came across. But we've not really had that quite yet.
Yeah. So doesn't exist yet, but I'd love to see a character like him. And they could change him up a little bit, and that'd be fine too. So
yeah, and again, it's a character that, from a on-screen perspective, would be completely new to most people. So you have a lot of flexibility with that. Okay, we've got two more Patreon questions. I think we want to make sure we get to these, and then maybe we could do a bit of a lightning round for the other half or the other dozen that we have that we received elsewhere. We got a bunch of questions this time, folks. They were fantastic.
Well, I'll give you this next question. You answer it, and then you. I don't need to answer it because I think we've talked about it.
The Lucid Truth one.
Yeah.
No, you have to answer this. I failed at this.
The best advice I could give, if you're gonna, so the question is, how do you watch Star Wars with your kids? My opinion is put down the prequel trilogy. The prequel trilogy has a lot of special effects. It's got Jar Jar Binks. It's easier to watch. I think from my own experience, I think it's probably the best experience to go through. And then after that, I would say move them into Episode 4. As much as I would love to be able to say, go put your kids in front of Star Wars Episode 4 and sit them down and enjoy it, I don't know that that's going to be the case, because it does, they're so used to like the Marvel Cinematic Universe these days and how quick and fast paced that is. And there's a lot of, joking around and stuff. And it was a different time. And we're talking about 77 when that movie came out. So I don't know that it stands up very well for children of our modern day age and that sort of thing. But that would be my advice. Or here's another way. You could even go about this way. Have them watch the sequel trilogy first. I don't think there's anything wrong in that, because there's a whole lot of backstory that they may or may not like. But the sequel trilogy is one that I think is more modern, and it is easier to pick up. And there's a lot of flashy lights, the great special effects, cinematography. It's all there if you want it. And they're not going to get bogged down by the storylines of the original trilogy or the prequel. They don't care, right? You're trying to introduce them to Star Wars. You got
a lot of people have an
lightsabers.
idea who Luke Skywalker was, right?
Sure,
even if they weren't really Star Wars fans.
Yeah, but that would be my advice on that.
So it's almost sacrilege not to say the original trilogy first, especially for some of us older. And we had some of the comments like that in Discord too, from Dragon of the Abyss. I think the one thing I do like about the prequels coming first, because the next thing I would do if I were to suggest that, I would go into Clone Wars. I would do the Clone Wars series from there, because you talk about that more modern way of doing things. You have a semi-modern way, and then you jump right into this episodic type of television series type of thing, and see how they do with that and with Rebels, right? Because I think some of that is, pretty easy digest. They're not as dark as some of the moments, especially depending on what age your kids are coming into it as. And I think some of the tones of the sequel trilogy might be a little more difficult for younger kids to grab onto. Now, there's a bunch of people who probably disagree with me on that one, but some of it is just kind of personal opinion on it. But I would almost throw Clone Wars and Rebels in the middle of there, rather than just saying, you got to go do all 9 movies, and here's how you do all 9 movies. There's enough stuff in there that you can pick a timeline and say, hey, let's just kind of explore this 10-year period and see where it goes.
Yeah, there's this. It's such a daunting task whenever someone says, I want to. There's actually somebody listening tonight for the first time, I think, and I don't think she's ever seen Star Wars. And I know this question comes up a lot. Like, hey, I want to get into it. I just don't know where to start. And it can be overwhelming, because there's just and then you're listening and watching this show, forget it, right? But there's just so much content out there. It's really hard to pick a point. And I would say just pick a point and know that if that doesn't stick with you, there's all kinds of other stuff, whether it be animation, live television, TV series kind of thing, live television series, other movies. There's all kinds of books, right? Comics, whatever. There's all kinds of entry points to get into Star Wars. And I think it's just a matter of finding which one to go with. And if you don't find the first one, ask us or ask somebody else, and they'll probably point you in another direction where you can kind of take.
And you know what? I think we have to throw out the idea that what if the Mandalorian is the first thing you expose them to?
Oh, that is absolutely 100% true.
Because we saw that with a bunch of people who knew what Star Wars was. They watched it and they're like, "Oh, this is great." And then you got Baby Yoda going on, and people just absolutely love it, right? There was a great balance and a great mix of all of that. With the a younger atmosphere, he's so cute and he does all these things, but then also there's a certain weight to a lot of that. And so I think Mandalorian, and then from Mandalorian you can go right into Boba Fett. So I think there's a thing there. I think the one piece of advice I would give is you have to stick with it. You have to be consistent with it over time, and not let it get in between gaps. Now, I'm not saying force feed it. They have to hold their eyes open and chain them, strap them to a chair like you did with yours to watch it. But I think you have to stick with it. You can't just, kind of start here and then maybe go back to it later on. I think it has to be somewhat consistent to say that, that we are a Star Wars family, and we're going to watch Star Wars, but we're not going to sit there and, torture you with Star Wars either.
Well, we can do that too, though.
Yeah. Well, the Patia household is a very different place than most of the rest of the world. Yep. Yes.
Okay. Question for you from Utini from Patreon.
This is my favorite. This is my favorite question, actually, for the whole entire night. By the way,
what scenes in Star Wars would you consider perfect scenes? Perfect in all aspects of filmmaking, although I guess not limited to the films.
yeah, this is such a difficult question too, but it really makes you think about just all of the iconic scenes. And so when I thought about this, it was I don't know squat about cinematography and things like that. I know what I like. I know what I like to see. I know what the effect it has on me. But you also have to look at everything else that goes with filmmaking. And that includes sound and the things that go in post production and things like that. One of the most one of the scenes that is most ingrained in my brain. There's really two of them. One is, of course, Luke and Vader in Return of the Jedi. The passion and the emotion, especially when Vader threatens Leia, all of that is really, really, really amazing stuff. And you like, as far as like kind of more complete type of thing, that's one of my personal favorites. I know that was not really the question, but that's where I went. Now, one of the most, like from a shot perspective, one of the ones I like is in Empire Strikes Back when Luke and Vader are kind of searching for each other before they go out on the antenna line. I'm drawing a blank of what that's called. There's a the weather vane type of thing. Yeah, there's a scene where Vader comes out of nowhere and takes a swing, and Luke dips down.
Yeah.
And this is the McQuarrie art, but Vader just looms so large over Luke in that scene. It just feels the visual representation of that. It always shocked me of just how powerful that could be, just that perspective that Vader just looks so much bigger and that there really is no hope and Luke is really outmatched, and the music is subtle in those places, and the lighting and everything else just makes it a really intense scene. But that's always one from just a perspective point of view. I always thought was a really, for me, it's kind of a perfect scene. Is there something that stands out for you? I know there's probably 6 dozen of them, right?
There's a lot of them, but the one scene. Well, first off, if you're talking about just cinematically, I mean, pick any scene in The Last Jedi, and it's just absolutely gorgeous to look at. The way Johnson filmed it all. I mean, we didn't. I've been outspoken about the faults that I had with The Last Jedi. At the end of the day, though, we didn't deserve that film. Like, it's so good in terms of how it's filmed and shot, and just some of the homages he has to some of the camera angles that he does and stuff is just, I mean, it's really, really masterful. And so from that regard, I would say you pick any scene in there and it's pretty good stuff, even from the music. Right. But, the one thing that, and I would agree with you. I mean, and I don't want to, the prequel trilogy has its moments. There's tons of those. The original trilogy, I would agree. Empire Strikes Back, that whole fight scene, there's tons of stuff in between there. That's really great. Of course, Return of the Jedi, when he confronts him after he threatens his sister, and then we get the whole music. We've talked about that on the show several times now. But the one of the scenes that I think more recently that has stood out for me, at least in film, is that whole Galen Erso speech, the Stardust speech. It's so different because it's a it's a voiceover, right? And it's cutting in between the emotion that Jen is showing, seeing her father, in knowing that, he's gone now, or, he's gone, and, being able to finally see him, and then him saying Stardust, and that whole speech, and the way Mickelson, or is it Mickelson?
Yeah, the guy? Mads Mikkelsen. Yep.
Yeah, the way he delivers that whole speech is just so, like, you're on the edge of your seat, and then they tie that in with the Death Star getting set up and ready to shoot things down, to attack Jeddah and all that. It's a very tense moment, but at the same time, it's like pulling at my heartstrings. And then you got the music by Giacchino in the background. He's got that really soft tone music, and it's something horrible that's happening. That whole scene for me is like really up there now, and I just love watching. I mean, that's like one of my favorite part out of Rogue One, to be honest. But I think that's where, given the way it was edited, the way it was shot, the character, the emotion that we get from, what's her name? Actress's name. We'll call her Jen.
Felicity Jones.
Felicity Jones. Yeah. What she delivers in that, the music. I mean, I think it all just works, and it's so different though. And that's my point, right? It's so different when you compare that to like literally almost any of the other Star Wars movies. We don't get a lot of people talking in the background. We don't get a lot of voiceovers, but in that one, it just really works for me. So that's my answer.
I have to be honest with you. I'm letting out a sigh of relief because I swear it was going to be
No,
Anakin
not
and Padme frolicking on the plains of Naboo in Attack of the Clones. I really was worried it was going to be that one.
No, it was either that or the love scene where, the awkward love scene in front of the fireplace. Okay.
That was something special for Star Wars, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was. All right.
Guess,
do you want to do
they don't
some
tape
of these other
everything
ones?
down. Yeah.
We've got still more here. We've got a lot of questions still.
Let's try to do these in a very quick fashion because we really do have quite a few. Let's try to do them in more of a rapid fire thing. We'll just kind of toss them back and forth.
Okay.
All right. So I don't know how to pronounce this. This is from Instagram. It's about a Bad Batch. So NRSTAL, Nurstel
I think it's Noah is his first name.
Okay, cool. Noah. Any chance we'll see an older Omega in an upcoming show like Andor or Ahsoka?
I think it's too early to say. I would say I would be down for it, and I really hope we do see it because it plays into 8 million theories that I've talked about on the show that I have with a way to bring her back into the series in some way.
Right. I want to see what happens in Bad Batch season 2 before we answer what could they do with her in live action because I want to see what that steer is on the character.
Well, look at this. Risk coming in. Dang, I forgot to ask my question about midichlorians. Man, save it, dude, because I'm all about talking about midichlorians, but not tonight. Glad you're here, man. Okay. Gab, is it Gabe? Gab is 14? Yeah, on Discord. Do we think Obi-Wan knows who Vader is at the start of the series? If so, does he know it's Anakin?
Okay, so help me make sure I'm remembering this right. At the end of Revenge of the Sith, we see Obi-Wan is watching a video of Anakin kneeling before Palpatine. Mm-hmm. Am I remembering that correctly? Okay.
Yeah.
So if there was audio to that video, then presumably he would hear Palpatine calling him, Darth Vader, and he would know the name. So I'm going to go out on a limb and says, yes, Obi-Wan knows who Vader is at this point. And, but does he know that he's alive? I think is probably the better question. And what does that look like when he finds out that Vader is alive or that he has a suspicion? But I think Obi-Wan's going to be pretty certain pretty early on.
Yeah. I think, so
several years have passed, right. When the Kenobi series pops up. So presumably Obi-Wan hasn't had his hand totally.
10 years have passed.
Right.
The other thing we got to remember is these guys are force sensitive. So even though he may not have heard or seen that, he may be having visions, or Yoda had visions and he's been communing with Yoda in some way, right? There's other ways that he could know that Vader's out there, or that Anakin has become Darth Vader. I think he's going to have to know, right? Because there's got to be a reason why he would leave. So, all right, that's enough on that question. Thank you for that one. What do you got the next one, right?
Yeah, so Shamus15 on Discord. This is a pretty long one, so stick with me. He had a theory pop into his head while listening to the podcast at work. We mentioned that the rod may be having a dampening effect on the Force. This is Marchion Ro in High Republic. What if Marchion Ro plans to connect it with the Starlight Beacon in hopes of stopping any forces from entering his territory? We've been trying to figure out how these guys would be able to put the Force itself, quotes, in danger. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I don't know if there's a question here other than what do you think about this? I thought this was awesome. Like, this would be really sick if they did this, and use Starlight Beacon as a weapon, and to negate the powers of the Jedi and all that. So,
and then the Jedi have to destroy Starlight Beacon.
Yeah, right. They are the ones that. Yeah, I think I mentioned that they're actually the ones that end up taking it down, not the Nihil. How that said, I think there's been enough teased and talked about and all that we've seen so far. I don't know if I would call these spoilers, but just in interviews and stuff, it does sound like the Nihil are going to be attacking Starlight Beacon. So probably not going to happen, but yeah, this would be a really sick way of, dealing with that in an alternate universe, if you will.
Yeah. The High Republic stories haven't really been a real twist and turn and a shocking type of thing. They've been relatively straightforward. So I agree with you on that one. I do like the idea of the Jedi and the Republic having to take out Starlight Beacon just because of the threat. That would be really funny. That'd be really fun.
Okay. So this next question is to me, and I'm the one that's supposed to ask it, but you want to?
I'll ask it. Right. Yeah. So from Nutheadred on Instagram, Albert, if you could go to the world between worlds and change one event in any timeline, what would it be? P.S. You can't stop Maz Kanata from being born. I love this guy. He gets us.
Yeah, he definitely watches. He or she definitely watches, listens, or they listen to the show because my disdain for Maz Kanata. So
I guess it's Nuthead Red. There you go. Sorry.
So if I could go back and change, I would go after Maz Kanata's mom or grandmother. No, I'm
wait,
kidding.
hold on. This is where Risk's question was going to go. Risk Bayless wanted to talk about midichlorians. Was Maz Kanata the original chosen one that was spawned from the midichlorians?
Okay.
So you can't take away her mom.
Okay, fine.
Dude, you can't use loopholes, man.
I know I can't use loopholes. All right, so if I had to go back in time, so I meant to look this up. There's that whole thing about that theory about stopping Hitler, right? If you had the opportunity to go stop Hitler, would you do it, right? Would you stop that baby from being born or kill the baby, whatever? It sounds horrible, I know. But and there's a whole psychology behind it, and there's tests and studies that people do on this stuff, and the trains and killing people, I don't want to get into that, right? But the where I was going with this is I would try to I was trying to think, would there be any harm in preventing Sidious from ever being born? Like, what would that do? Like, if you think about it, Sidious wasn't around. Do you think somebody like, I mean, there's a lot to be said about, the Force has a will and a way, and you may alter events, but it's still going to happen in some. I'm not talking about all that, but if you just took it, straight and said, look, we stopped Sidious from ever being born. You still got to contend with Tenebis or Plagueis, and we don't know what's going to happen there. I mean, the Sith could just still be around during this time, but does it get in the way of somebody like Anakin being in love with Padme and having Obi-Wan there, who had his relationship with Satine, and having Qui-Gon Jinn stay alive and be the one that trains him? Right? There's a path that completely goes around all of the events that we've taught, that we know and love, as far as the Skywalker saga. So I really couldn't find any faults with it. It's hard to say what would happen in light of Palpatine not being around there, because it feels like the dark side would still find a way to manifest somebody at some point is going to be evil. Maybe it's 100 years from now, but it feels like that's still going to come up because the rule of two still exists and all
right.
that. What do you think?
I would find a way for Rey and Ben to be together forever.
There you go. I love you, Jonesy. Thank you for doing that.
Right.
Okay.
In reality, I think it would be something with Luke and Ben, actually, some way to try to change that relationship in some minor way that would get them on a better path. I think that would be an interesting dynamic to see if Ben still falls. I mean, because that's always the argument, right? Is you make a change, but your destiny is what it is. Destiny finds a way to correct itself to get back on that path. It will happen one way or another. How it happens might change, but it's still going to happen. And so I think that's the idea behind this. And that's why World Between Worlds is a really interesting concept of whether or not that still happens. If you're between the Force, between the, what's real and what's not real, do the rules still apply? So I think that's always an interesting one there.
Yep. Okay. Jonesy from My Star Wars Guys on Instagram says, have we reached the point of no return as far as seeing a Solo sequel? Is there still a chance on Disney Plus at this point? Do you even care?
Yes, I do care. This actually hits me hard. Yeah, I care. This actually hits me close to home, because I've been on record as saying I would love a Solo sequel. I would love the Calrissian Chronicles. So I would love to see this thing. Are we past the point of no return? I don't think there's never a no return. I think there's always an opportunity to go back and do something. But is it going to happen in the next 5 years or 10 years?
No.
That seems like a really, really, really remote chance on that one. And that breaks my heart, because I think Solo wasn't bad. I liked Solo. It was entertaining. It was nothing grandiose or super spectacular, but it was fun. It gave us some of the things we wanted to know. Yeah, it was a little campy in some places about we had to explain all the things, but overall, really, really fun movie. And I don't know why we can't have more fun movies like that. And that's actually fairly well done. Now, if that one wouldn't have had all the problems it had with it, I think we'd have a different perspective on it. And of course, that movie seems to be the pivot with what we had in the fandom too, of what was going on. So there's a lot of things that were kind of working against it in that regard. I don't put that at the foot of the movie itself, so to speak. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't think it's anytime soon if we do. But I'm still holding out hope. I will wave that flag until I'm old and gray.
If we weren't getting so much content around Crimson Dawn and Kira and her plans and all that, then I would say, okay, we're we're still poised to have something come out. However, it feels like a lot of that material that may have been in a sequel trilogy or a sequel or a trilogy for Solo feels like it's coming out. So doesn't mean they still couldn't do it. But I think they're going to want to get through all of this first, and so that may be a few years before we come back to it. And then you're talking about, okay, well, now the actors and actresses are, they've moved on. You've got scheduling conflicts. They don't look the same, although you could de-age them, right? There's all kinds of complications that come at that point. So it does feel like it is getting further and farther away. I would say at this point it doesn't look like it's going to happen, but could be wrong.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks for the question.
Yeah.
All right. From Twitter, Soap on a Rope. Why did Luke not demonstrate Force abilities much later in life when he was arguably one of the most powerful ever? We see stories of children at very early ages demonstrating their abilities, which would then result in Jedi swinging by to take them away. What was different here?
So I read this, and I think what they're trying to ask is, why did he not demonstrate Force abilities much later? Why wasn't it until he okay. The way I read this question is,
why was he so old before he started really showing?
Right.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good question, because honestly, those kids are identified really early, right? The Jedi Order comes in, they swoop them up at toddler ages and take them out and start training them, right? We saw the younglings in Revenge of the Sith. So I think it's a good question. I don't have a really good theory as to why Luke didn't show this, or why didn't this manifest, because you would think he and Leia, honestly, would be demonstrating something. Now, I think the only excuse I could make is, even somebody as powerful as Anakin, right? He didn't have telekinesis or any of these really elaborate type things. That requires training, right? So you can only do so much without somebody unlocking all of your potential to do all the really cool stuff. So what it manifests as a child is more about the foresight, right? Being able to see things before they happen, having dreams that eventually come true. Having quick reflexes maybe is another example. So some of that stuff, you're living on Tatooine,
Beggar's Canyon.
Yeah, Beggar's Canyon, right? I mean, he probably had these bouts of greatness, or these moments of greatness, that he just chalked up to being a really good pilot, when really it was the Force in him that was kind of manifesting in kind of giving him the extra whatever he needed. So I think it probably did. It would be cool to kind of see or hear, maybe in the Kenobi series we see something, or they make a reference of it or whatever, but I think that's really why I think there's a limitation as to what a toddler can manifest by themselves without some additional training. And unfortunately for Luke, that wasn't until years later when he finally met up with Kenobi and then Yoda.
Yeah, I think Anakin's a great example. I think Rey is a bit of an example too, right? And she even says something's always been inside her. It's just now that it's starting to. Now, that doesn't mean that she didn't have abilities. I mean, clearly she's very resourceful in those. But who knows what else she was doing that were, like you said, more in line with, this is the Force's abilities, not necessarily something I'm just really, really good at, but it's a merging of the two. It's a cross of those two. And I think the piloting seems to be the one that's the most common, but we get, especially with Anakin and Luke, that seems to be the common thread between the two of them, and being able to have an idea of what's about to happen so that they don't wreck every single time. Although Anakin seems to have wrecked numerous times.
Yeah.
And like Obi-Wan says, another happy landing.
Another happy landing. Risk Bayless brings up a good, a kind of hot topic right now. Could you make the argument that Obi-Wan was masking the Force for both of them? That's potentially true. I mean, in the High Republic, there are all kinds of masking the Force out there, right? We know that's happening. It's been happening with Luke later on.
Right.
In the comics, it's happened. I mean, that's potentially, you could say that. But I think the easier, simpler explanation that we probably have some precedence of is that it doesn't come out in the way that we want to think about it until they've had formal training of some sort.
Right.
Okay. Where are we? We're almost done here. Twitter. Force healing. This is from Mr. Pink 714. Force healing is in at least 4 movies, including Star Wars and New Hope, but everyone acts like it's a new force power. So I can give you the question. I'll just add a question in here. Is it a new force power?
Well, I'm trying to think what the Force.
Wait, hold on.
Okay.
Dante put a broom in there, signaling that Broom Boy was demonstrating the Force and telekinesis. So
true. It's like,
I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but
it's like Mickey Mouse and Fantasia, right?
Yes, that's what it was. Dutini.
So, right. Always expect Dante to come through in a pinch for us. So I'm trying to think what force healing is in all the movies. So I think in A New Hope, it might be referencing when Obi-Wan is putting his hands on Luke's head after Luke has been attacked.
Which, by the
And-
way, that was from the 87 role playing game, right? So there was you had force healing in that role playing game,
Right.
and that was always not officially in the books that I remember, but when we talked about a scenario when that was done, that was one of those scenes. Same thing with well, it doesn't matter, but go on.
Right.
Sorry.
So I'm trying to think what the other, if that's one of them, I'm trying to think what the other two instances would be, in including Rey and Rise of Skywalker. So is it a new one? I think so. Is it new? Probably not. But I think it's one of those things of what have we seen on screen in a very literal way, and actually something that seems to actually have what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. It's just something that we can actually tangible, right? So there was an actual wound and we saw it being healed, and we had that type of activity going on, less so than a more spiritual type of way. And again, if I knew what the 4 examples he was looking for more specifically, he or she was, well, it says Mr., so I'm assuming it's a he. Maybe we'd have a better answer for that question and more analysis on it. But clearly, we've had force healing in a lot of expanded universe and legends content, so it's not a foreign concept for us. But I think this idea of transferring the force and imbuing someone in it taking something from you to put into them, I think that is a bit more of a unique idea than what we've had previous. What we had previously in Legends was more around the dark side, right? When you exerted yourself in a dark side way, it deteriorated your body. So it was almost like it was withdrawal. It was taking that energy from you, not necessarily you giving it willingly to someone else. And if Rise of Skywalker, the way they make it sound is that you can't recover that. It weakens you almost permanently. And that's at least what it was suggesting. And of course, we saw that at the end when they trade lives for one another. But yeah, so again, I think it's more the idea of the transference of power is something that's a little bit more unique than what we've had previously. And maybe one of the movies he's talking about is, well, no, I guess we're talking about Grogu as well here, but yeah, I don't know. Anyway, do you have any thoughts on that one?
Other than that, it's at this point, if you think about where we are, if we were going to see it all called out as force healing, the only time we would have seen that is in the prequel trilogy, right? They would have been the only ones that had the knowledge and the Jedi archives, the library, and the teachings and all of that. And unfortunately, it didn't really come out in there. So by the time we get to New Hope, Ben Kenobi is probably the only one. Him and Yoda are the only two that really kind of would have that training. And Luke wouldn't necessarily, he'd have to have gotten it from somewhere else. There are no archives. It's just a lost trait, lost art. And we see this in the High Republic, we're seeing powers and abilities that we've not seen in the prequel trilogy or beyond. And it's because these guys are still working with a lot of history and have all of the knowledge and can teach all this stuff, right? So that's part of it. The other, just to go back to where the other examples are, I've seen other people talk about, Luke, when he takes off Vader's helmet and he says, well, you'll die. And he's like, nothing can stop that or whatever. That was a moment where somehow he bestowed some life on him to kind of be alive just for a few more seconds to kind of have that final conversation.
Was that through his tears or?
Okay. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, that's just kind of my thoughts on it. It's something that it's been around in every video game. It was around in the tabletop role-playing game in the 80s and the D20 system as well. And again, I've always just chalked it up to it's a lost art. But, if we ever get a sequel trilogy and we ever get back to the days of the old Republic where Jedi are rampant and running around and have all these abilities and stuff, that's it's something I think we're going to see quite often.
Right, because the other thing we haven't seen from Legends is a healing trance either, right? So just being able to restore yourself through meditation. I think we've seen some hints of it, but not necessarily anything really on the nose quite yet.
Yeah, I mean the Qui-Gon Jinn meditating there is probably maybe an example where, maybe he took a wound that we don't see. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, we just have one. I don't know if you have this picture up.
I do, and I have an answer for this one, but go ahead.
Oh, really? Yeah. So I don't know what the planet is, but this looks like it's from Star Wars Galaxies. Is that right?
It is definitely from Star Wars Galaxies.
Okay.
I logged a lot of hours playing that game.
Okay. So this looks like a loading screen.
Let me pull it up. Okay. So this is the image, and the question was, name that planet.
Yeah.
So,
I'm going to phone a friend, Albert Padilla.
No. Okay. You can phone me. That is the planet of Dantooine. So, and the only reason I know this is because Dantooine, it was a really great planet. There was lots of cool.
Yeah.
It was like a hub for all kinds of adventures and stuff. That ship, though, that is a Y-wing long probe. So it's a Y-wing that was modified, and you can see the ion cannons are enclosed. They're not like open like a normal Y-wing that is.
Right.
But you would take one of these things, and they had they sacrificed like shields and all kinds of stuff for more fuel, so you could travel across the galaxy further in one of these things, and that's why it's got that little funky little wings there on the ion cannons as well. All that to say, though, the question was, what planet was it? That's, as far as I remember, that is Dantooine in the background. And who was this? Todd T Price 24 on
Right.
Twitter. Let me know if I got this right. I'll message you too, and just because I really don't know. I'm going.
Dantooine makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because I did play some Star Wars Galaxies, and you spent quite a bit of time on Dantooine.
Yeah. So,
well, that's it. That's a show, folks.
That's a wrap.
Thank you, everyone, for all the questions. Patreon members, thank you for all your support. Again, when we have the Q&A shows, if you're a Patreon member, you are guaranteed to have your question read and answered on air. And the rest we try to get to. Hopefully, we're usually pretty good about getting to all of them, although a bit briefly at times. But if you'd like to make sure you get your question answered in the future, take a look over at patreon.com/thecantinacast.
Tune in next week when. No.
Tune in next week when we look at the monster of Temple Peak.
Thank you. That's exactly what we're going to look at. Will be Monster of Temple Peak will be. Is it tomorrow? The final issue?
Oh, you.
I think it's right. I hope so.
No, the final issue is already out. That came out.
Oh, that's right.
Last week.
I haven't read it yet. So, but we're going to cover that series for anybody that's a High Republic fan. Should be good. Good talk because there's it's a cool storyline, and there's a lot of Ty York, which is not a bad thing.
No.
What's that?
Great. No, yeah. There's no bad Ty York. Yeah, it was a good story.
And then just quickly, I want to just I'll rattle these off. We already shared them with Patreon, but what we're looking at right now, subject to change. I'll give you the titles. We're going to be talking about, 394, The Monster of Temple Peak. 395 is I Am All the Jedi. Well, I don't know what that means. Yes, I do. 396 is The Rule of Two. So we'll get into some of the Sith and the Rule of Two and talk about pros and cons and some other cool stuff there. We'll get into 397 will be the State of the High Republic. I wanted to do a recap as we're kind of going into the very end of the year. Wave 3 is about to start of Phase 1 come January. I kind of want to bring everybody up to date on where we are and kind of what we're thinking, where our head's at with all of this stuff going into that. And then at that point, we'll head right into, we're going to do a Mandalorian Season 2 1 year later, kind of recap, talk about some of the episodes, some of the moments, and then kind of feed that into Book of Boba Fett, maybe speculate on Season 3. I was hoping by then we would get something, but we're not. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. And then we'll end the year on going into the Book of Boba Fett episode. So starting with the first one, which will be 12/29-ish, somewhere around there.
Yeah, so we'll have to see exactly when that one gets recorded, being that it's the right in the middle of the holidays. But yeah, well,
we're gonna do a final hype show, so that'll be the first one, and then sometime
hopefully
after,
we'll have a little more something by the time we do the final hype. show.
Yeah, I think we will. I think we can. I mean, if we don't, we can still probably put together an hour and a half show.
If there's anybody that can do it, it's us.
Yes. Oh, look at that. We're 2 minutes shy of 2 hours. Anything before we get out of here?
Yeah, shout out to the people who show up on the live stream. Just as a reminder, we do put a live stream out, companion with the audio. So if you want to watch us, we're over on YouTube. Or you can also get it on Facebook. We do post it to other areas as well, but those are the two. You can go get it after the fact. Twan, Chris, Jeff, Steph, Dante. Oh, goodness. Who else we got in here? We got, I said Dante already, right? Aaron was in here. We appreciate you showing up, Aaron. I'm going through the list. I usually much more prepared, but we had a lot of
in there.
We had a lot of conversation today, which was really awesome. I know we had a different name in here. We had Risk. Oh, Rob, there he is. Rob in there, and of course Cole was there. Good friends of ours. So appreciate everyone showing up again. We're usually doing this either on a Sunday or a Tuesday or whenever Albert can make time for it. So appreciate it.
Yep. And Riley, if you're still listening, thanks for watching and listening to the show. Hopefully you learned something about Star Wars. So. With that, we'll be back again next week with the Monster at Temple Peak of Temple Peak, and I did not with Ash and who was the other gentleman? Was it Michael, the other Patreon subscriber? I didn't get the credits updated. Dan, sorry. So Dan and Ash, my apologies. I wasn't able to get the credits updated, so you won't see your names on this one. But Ash, I know it's important to you. I will get this updated for the next show. So we'll see you guys sometime next week.
Long live Solo.
Stop it.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.